Good afternoon and welcome to our webinar on Credit Hound by Draycir. My name's Tom Grange. I'm one of the account managers here at hance and I'm acting as a moderator for today's presentation. I'm joined by Zoe Young, who's a key account manager at our partner Draycir. Now, before I hand over to Zoe, I'd like to review a few simple housekeeping items with you. We expect this webinar to last approximately 45 minutes. Please note that today's webinar is being recorded and will be available to view on demand. All participants are set to listen only and will remain so for the duration of the webinar. However, if you have a question, click the question button on the right-hand side of your screen. In the new pane that opens, type your message in the top box and click Ask. Some questions we may be able to answer live, but otherwise we'll be coming back to you following today's webinar. Do feel free to submit your questions at any points during the webinar and we'll review them appropriately. And with that, I'd like to hand you over to our presenter, Zoe.
Super. Thank you very much for that introduction, Tom. Welcome to the webinar, everybody. As Tom said, we are actually the authors of the software that you're about to see today, and it's all about advanced credit control. So for those of you that don't already know about Draycir, that's probably a good place for us to start. I'm obviously one of the account managers working here at Draycir, but just to give you an overview of the business, I've just changed the slide there so you'll be able to see the sort of size of the business we are. And we are very much global, and especially with Credit Hound. Credit Hound seems to be one of those pieces of software that fits everybody's needs on a global basis. So some of you, I think, have already joined me this week for our webinar on Spindle Document Distribution, which I will always mention when I'm doing a Credit Hound demonstration, simply because you do get part of Spindle Document Distribution with Credit Hound. And what Spindle Document Distribution is actually distributing documents out to your customers. And of course, we're going to be using that within Credit Hound because Spindle will send out the actual chasing letters or follow-up letters, whatever it is that you want to send out. But also I'll be talking about using, when you've used Spindle to send out your invoices first and foremost, because Spindle will archive those invoices, we can actually look to attach the copy of that invoice with the chasing letter. Because how many times do you chase someone and they say, I've not paid it because I don't have a copy of the invoice? Well, let's rule that out completely and already give them that invoice so you don't have that excuse. So as I say, we're going to concentrate on Credit Hound today, but I just wanted to give you a bit of detail about Spindle first of all, because obviously we cross over into that as well. So Credit Hound, all about advanced credit control. And I have actually been a credit controller myself, so I absolutely know what happens in a day of the life of a credit controller and also all the manual admin tasks that you do. And most people that I speak to and I ask how they do their credit control is exactly how I was doing credit control 24 years ago. And that is, I run off an age debt report, and from there, that's where I'll start my chasing. So I start my chasing by looking at the age debt report and then determining who is it I need to chase. But of course, I might have already chased someone yesterday, so I need to have a look at my age debt report that I ran yesterday with my notes that might be on it. I then need to check throughout the day if people have paid, because obviously that age debt report was only as good as the time I ran it off. I need to check my diary because I've got some reminders in there of people to call. Then I need to start making notes of people that I need to either post a letter out to or what I need to template an email to as well. Chase up previous calls as well. I mean, that's just part of it, but all of that takes so much time. So actually, before I can even start chasing, I've got a hell of a lot of things to do before I get to that point. So Credit Hound is going to take out those manual processes, basically everything we can automate. That's what we're going to do with Credit Hound. So I don't need to do that. So Credit Hound sits on its own. So there's actually a connector that connects up Dynamics GP with Credit Hound as well. So I don't need to be looking back in GP all the time in order to see whether someone's paid or not, because it's going to automatically give that information into Credit Hound. I can then set up some rules and actions in Credit Hound, which will automatically send out a letter i.e. it's going to print it out, or it's going to automatically send out an email. How does it know which to do? Well, basically, it's going to go back to GP, see if there's an email address, send it out by email. If there's no email address, then it will print it out. So for those of you that were on the demonstration with me or that already have Spindle, you'll know exactly what that means. So it's going to do that, like I say, as part of that automation. And also it's going to schedule reminders for you, but automatically. When we're talking about automatically sending out letters, people can feel quite nervous by that. And I can totally understand that, because out of all of your accounts that you're chasing, you'll probably have 3 different groups of people. Those really bad payers, people that are sort of okay, and then your key accounts. So I actually may have 3 different groups that I want to chase in 3 different ways. I mean, my key accounts, I might not even want them ever to receive an automated letter. I only ever want to talk to them. My bad payers, I want to chase them quite firmly, and everyone else, I usually sort of want to chase them in a different way. So how can I do this? Well, I can actually use maybe something like the class ID or an analysis code, or even I can use categories within Credit Hound to determine what customer I want to chase in what way. So even though it's automatically going to chase, we can actually determine who is going to be chased and how. Now, this is a brilliant part of Credit Hound. And for those of you who have looked at Credit Hound in the past, might not have even seen this to-do list. So this is a new aspect of Credit Hound that we've got. And this really is your starting point for any of the credit controllers. So because it will actually tell me who I need to call today. It really is a to-do list for that credit controller. But as you would expect with any software, it automatically removes things that I now don't need to do. So whether that is because that person is paid, or whether it's a dispute that has now resolved that I don't need to chase up, things like that I can do within the to-do list. And the other great thing about Credit Hound is it has a chase screen that can give me a bird's eye view of that account and all of the transactions that are outstanding. I'm a credit controller. I only care about what's outstanding. I'm not bothered about anything else that's paid. But also what I need to see is a full chase history of every transaction, everything that I've done against each individual transaction. And that's what that chasing screen will give me. It will also give me dispute tracking as well. So if you imagine I'm automatically sending out letters and emails, I don't ever want to send one to something that's in dispute or query. So we can actually tell Credit Hound to exempt those transactions from that sort of chase as well. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go straight into Credit Hound to actually show you the software itself. And as Tom said before, if anyone has got any questions, I can't see the questions coming through. So that's why we have Tom just to help me with that. But if you do have any questions, I can see if I can answer those as we go along as well. So this is what Credit Hound looks like. So I've logged into Credit Hound. And if you've got several credit controllers within your business, then what you can do, and if those credit controllers only look after their own accounts, what I'll be seeing here as the user is just the accounts that I look after. If you have a team of credit controllers and everyone dips into all of the accounts, that's fine. I'll see all of the accounts. It's however you work. So what I'm seeing, and this is just a dashboard, I can see what the outstanding debt is. And of course, this is generated from GP. I can also see my promised cash. This is a great way of having a look at your forecast of what money's coming in. So of course, this is generated through Credit Hound, and it's how the users are using Credit Hound that will enable me to see what the forecast is coming in. I can also see my mini age debt, really important for a credit controller, because of course what I want to try and do is reduce these debtor days here as much as possible, so I can see that there. I can also bring through other widgets within here. Here are the ones that I can add to it, so I can have this screen displaying anything I want to. What I have here is my 8 highest balanced accounts. So these are going to be the accounts I always want to keep my eye on. And you can see it's color coded in the same way that this pie chart is color coded as well. So red is overdue, green is not due yet, yellow is disputed or queried, which is in Credit Hound, not in GP. and blue is something that hasn't been allocated. So I'm going to know from here straight away that I've got an amount of cash here that's in dispute. I've got £10,000 in dispute. I need to get that off dispute as soon as possible, and I can visually see that straight away from this dashboard. So the way in which I would use this software if I was a credit controller, first thing I would do is go straight to the to-do list, and this tells me what it is that I need to do today. It's as simple as that. But to get to this point here, other things have happened. So this morning, it's already run all of my letters to be sent out, whether it's printed or emailed. And also it's generated me a list of people I need to contact. I know that's happened because I can see the word automated at the side here. And this is basically the type of task. So I know all these people need contacting today because the type of rule it's come from. We're going to have a look at that in a moment. I can also see this last one that says callback. That's basically someone that has said they'll pay me today. I know they've not paid me yet because it's still sitting there. So if anyone throughout the day pays for any of these transactions that are actually due, it will disappear off my list. So really, this to-do list is great because I know I'm not going to call someone and they say, yeah, I've already sent you payment. You should already have the payment. I will know because if I have, it will disappear off the list. So let me show you what happens before we get to this stage just here. And there's no real rule about the rules within Credit Hound. These can be set up to meet your requirements within your business. So I'll show you the example how I have set them up. So I've got 4 very basic rules. The first rule is a preemptive letter. And I actually probably only want to send these to my problem payers. It's a little bit of a nudge to remind them there's something to pay in a few days' time. So that's my first email. If they don't pay, I've then got my first letter, which also is then going to incorporate everyone else that wasn't even a problem payer. Then I send out my letter number 2. Then I want to phone them if they haven't paid. So what this means is all of my customers are either going to receive 2 or 3 emails, and I'm hoping these emails will allow them to pay during that time, which means by the time it comes to me phoning them, all that hard work's already done. And what I would do is set up these rules on my server, which actually means no one even needs to be in the office for these rules to run. They're done automatically. So for an example here at Draycir, every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 9:30, these rules are automatically generated. We know they're generated because, of course, I can see the automated here if there was any telephone calls to be made. So it's all done in the background. So how do I set up the rules? Well, the first thing I probably want to do is determine, do I want to chase all of my customers the same? And the answer might be yes, I do. But if the answer is no, I actually want to ring fence certain groups of customers, then there's several ways that we can do that. We can actually bring through any analysis codes that I've got in Sage. So this might dictate to me what type of customer there are. So I don't have an analysis code to do that. So what I'm going to do is actually manually just go through Credit Hound, ticking all those customers that I know are bad payers. Then what I can do is change the category to say all of these people are problem payers. And as you can see, I've actually set up other ones, and you can set these up yourselves. These are the sorts of ones you would expect to see out of the box. So as soon as I press save, what we'll be able to see, if I just bring through that category column through so we can see that one as well. So as you can see, I can tailor these screens as well. And this is just for me, the user being Zoe. I can now see I have the word problem against those customers now. So this now means I can create a rule which will just look at those accounts. So if I now have a look at, go back to my rules, which we just quickly looked at, I've already got a rule here saying preemptive letter. So if I press edit, you'll be able to see how these are created. And this is where I'll start to determine what age of the transaction do I want to chase? So actually, because these are such bad payers, what I want to say, I want to chase these at -7 days. So in other words, before it's even due, I'm going to give them a reminder. So it doesn't really have to be worded as a chasing letter. It could be worded such as, I hope you received your goods and everything was okay. If not, please let us know before your invoice is due on and stipulate the date. It may be just checking you're happy with the service. If not, please let me know as soon as possible as your invoice is due on and put the date. So it could be anything like that at all. So to us, it's a chase. To the customer, it's just very good customer service. You don't have to do it. This is just to give you ideas of the software. The other sorts of things I can include in this rule criteria are, if it's disputed, do not send them a letter because you don't want to chase something that's in query. If I've spoken to them in the last, I've got 7 days, I might want to extend that to 9 days, for example. Don't chase them. There's nothing worse than you contacting someone to say, okay, I'll send you that payment next week. The following day you get chased for it. So this is how you can exempt them out of this particular rule. The one thing that I do want to add, of course, is that category. Or remember, we can bring through an analysis code as well for it. So this is what I'm going to do now, is to say, this rule is only included for those people with the word problem. So remember my category here, we can see down the right hand side, is only going to look at those people. So now when I press OK, that rule is now set up and it's ready to be run. So remember, when this is on your server, it will do it automatically, but I'm just going to show you manually how it works. So once the rule has been set up, I press run, it will run the rules. These are the people that will now receive that letter. If I press OK, I will see a preview of the letter itself. And this is where, if you were on the webinar using Spindle, or if you're a user of Spindle, you already know how to use Spindle. For those that don't, this is how easy it is. I select print. I select the print driver called Spindle Pro Auto, and then that's it sent. Because I'm pressing print, it doesn't mean it's going to print. What it means is I'm actually sending it to Spindle for Spindle to look for the automation of how I'm going to send it. So Spindle will actually generate the body of the email. So all your logos can be put in here, all of the text and everything else. Here's the PDF, which has all the information for the customer. So you can see I've got all of the information there and all the corresponding invoices for it as well. So if you have a look at these, you'll see it's generated a different letter for each one. So what you can do if you want is also attach the invoices. So in a real life environment, what would happen is you'd have a copy of every single one of those invoices here, but only if you sent the invoice out using Spindle in the first place. And the reason for that is this invoice is actually sitting in an archive somewhere. Credit Hound picks it up and sends it. If you don't have Spindle, you're not having Spindle with Credit Hound, it will still send out the letter, but that's all it will send out. You just wouldn't have the corresponding invoice with it as well. That's the only difference. Okay, so I'll just show you another letter. So this is now my second email that's going out for the problem customers, or the first email that's going out for anyone that's not had the category problem on them. And the reason I wanted to show you this is just because if you're wanting to get your money in as quick as possible, an idea for you is actually you can put a pay now button either within the detail of the actual email itself or against the PDF as well. So you can see here, you can either use it with SagePay or you can use it with WorldPay. When you click onto the actual PDF itself, you'd actually see a Pay Now button there as well. As soon as the customer clicks on that, it will take them straight through in order to pay for it. So that's an idea as well of how to get money in if you're already using credit cards. If you're not taking card payments at the moment, but it's something of interest to you, then just simply ask your hance account manager and they'll be able to point you in the right direction. So of course, I've then got my letter to, and then I've got my telephone chasing list. So I've already run my telephone chasing list. That's how I've got it in the to-do list itself. Because once I set up the criteria, the action on the right-hand side is what do you want to happen when I've actually seen a transaction like this. And of course, we've looked at sending a letter. To do just basically means it puts something on the to-do list, but we can do lots of other things as well. Do you need to put an account on stop? If you do, you can do that as part of an action as well. But also people can use Credit Hound as almost like a tidy up as well. So if you have got people on stop and you want to take them off stop, instead of manually going through GP and doing that, or manually going through Credit Hound and doing that, what you can actually do is run a rule that simply says in the criteria, if the balance equals 0, take it off stop. So it's very typical that people will use these rules just to tidy up Credit Hound and not actually do anything else. Even this category here, when maybe you're sending out more of a legal type letter, if you want to put it on stop at that same time, and then the category, so remember the category here where I have problem, I might want another category called legal. So what I could then do is create just here in my action, it could be I'm sending out a letter, I'm putting them on stop, and also can you change the category to legal, and also change it from this credit controller to another user, maybe someone like the financial controller or someone like that. You can do all of those steps all in one. Putting an account on stop is the only thing that goes two ways. So if I put it on stop here, it will put it stop in GP, or if I take it off stop, vice versa as well. So let's go back to the to-do list. So remember, all that sort of information about the rules, the credit controller doesn't really need to know about it or worry about it even, because the idea is that those rules get run automatically, so no one needs to do it. I don't need to send it to Spindle Pro Auto or anything like that. It all gets done automatically. Some people like to have a message pop up on the screen to say, is it okay if I run the rules? And they will just want to physically say yes. You don't even have to do that. It can just be automatic. So what I'm seeing here is all the tasks that I need to do for today. And all I would do is click into the task. The task would tell me what it is I'm actually chasing. So it could be the case here that I just want to put a note on. I might have called them and I need to remind myself to call after 4 p.m. this afternoon. So when I save it, what will happen is it will be able to see the actual message here. So it's just nice as me as a user just for that prompt. It could be the case that I actually want to reassign it all together. So I'm not here after 4 o'clock today, but Richard is. So I'm actually going to reassign it to Richard. So what will happen then? That task will be reassigned to Richard, and then it will come off my list entirely. So depending on what view I have at this stage here, and depending on what I have, will depend on whether I can still view that or not. So that's why I'm still seeing it. So let's click into Festival Home. So this is going to be the example account that I'm going to use. So just pressing the Chase account will actually take me into that. I keep talking about the bird's eye view. This is what I like to call it. And this is where I can see all of the outstanding transactions. In the middle, I see the audit trail. At the bottom, I just see further information. This screen can be totally changed. If I always have lots of transactions, I might want to push this along to the side so it fills up the whole of the left-hand side. You can move them all around. It's whatever's easier for yourself, basically. Once you've moved them around, it will stay like that unless you reset it, basically. So highlighting on a transaction in the middle will give you the audit trail at the bottom. If I click on another transaction, I can see there's no audit trail here. I do know that before I click on it, simply because of the icons that are shown on the left-hand side. So the icons will dictate what has happened on that account. So the envelope will mean that there's been a promise of a certain amount of cash. The icon here basically means there's some history within it. The flag indicates there's been a dispute. So it's very easy for me to look at this account to say there's one dispute and also they've promised me money for another. Nothing else has been chased. So I'd have quite a light-hearted conversation with this person. If you imagine it was the same, but I had envelopes on all of these, I've obviously spoken to them a lot, they've promised me a lot, but I've not received anything. I'd have a much firmer conversation with them. And it's important for a credit controller to have that sort of information to hand as soon as they click into an account, and that's what Credit Hound will give you. So how do I go about putting notes onto the system? Well, very easy. We have here a chase button, and this chase button is for the credit controller to write any notes. If I've got any high level information, I can put it here. So only call after 2 p.m. Let's say Monday through to Wednesday. High level information so everyone can see it. That's where I'm going to put it. Information against a transaction. This chase button here is exactly the one I'm going to use. Because it's only a certain user type that can do this, which is a full system user, which is what I'm using now, they're the only people that have this start button. When I press this start button, it will allow me now to add notes in this section just here. You can also see some reason codes here. So a lot of people like to do an analysis of why people aren't paying. If you do, what I'll be doing here, what is it the customer has said? They wanted a copy invoice. Now I can do an analysis code of how many people asked for a copy invoice when I'm chasing up their account. If I wanted to chase more than one account, if you keep your eye on where it says amount promised, if I highlight on some more transactions, you can see it adds it up for me. So if someone wasn't paying it all at once, that's fine. I can actually change the value in there as well. So it's how much they are going to pay me as well. Let's just stick with one invoice for now. So when is it they're going to pay? So this is, of course, tying in with the to-do list. So they're going to pay me by next week. I know that the money's posted on GP by about 10:30. So that's what time my reminder is going to be. Because it's already ticked, it's automatically going to set me a reminder. Now, how do I ensure, or how do I help ensure this person is going to do as they say? I put it in writing. It's as easy as that. So when I stop this chase, what it will give me is the option to actually send through a follow-up letter. And I do apologise, a user error just there. I actually forgot to do something to allow that to happen, which is rather embarrassing, but let me just go back and do that step again. That just shows I am only a human being after all. So let's just go back. So I do apologise for that. Let's just go back through there. Let's just put some notes in here. So they're going to pay me by next week. And we said, and we don't have to put a time in there, but it just sort of finishes off that process. There we go. Okay, now it's going to give me a follow-up letter. There we go. So if somebody just asks for a copy invoice, brilliant. If I've already used Spindle to send out the invoice, I can just select this. I've already got a templated email, and it's going to send an email with, here is the attached invoice or invoices you have requested. Or if they weren't there, I've got a templated email to say, please find attached a letter with details of the invoices that are outstanding, which I've tried to contact you today. Or here's the one I want to do is, thank you for speaking to me today. You said you were going to pay this amount of money. So if I had changed it, that's what would be in there. And you promised to have it by this date. So again, I'm using Spindle to send it out. So all I need to do is select Spindle Pro Auto, and that's now going to send out the letter. So when I go into my Outlook, we're going to be able to see that particular email then come through. So it's the whole, if you didn't do that follow-up, it's almost because nothing's in writing, there's no evidence that conversation has ever happened and you're less likely to get the money. But actually, because this is now sitting in their inbox and it stipulates everything they said to me, you said you'll pay this much by this date, We're human beings, so yeah, it kind of, you're in the you'll be on their backs run because it's in writing. So we do find that the users of Credit Hound that don't do the follow-up are less likely to get paid than those people that do use the follow-up. So once I've completed it, as with any to-do list, I tick complete, and that is going to remove it from my list of things to do. And I just then go down and complete the rest of my tasks that I have left to do today. So what about if someone calls into the office? So let's stick with Festival Homes, the account that I've just been using. So Festival Homes has come in. I can just go to that accounts list, filter on it and click into it. I'm back at that same place again. So this time, if there's a dispute, how would I do that? So very similar, still press Start Chase because it's only a full system user that can do the dispute. But now what I'm going to do is just add a dispute. You'll have different, for every organization that's on the webinar today, you'll all have different disputes. Some might be similar. So this list here is completely configurable. So let's go for the invoice is incorrect. So what I'm going to do is put invoice is too much. What are my notes? Check the order. So my customer is telling me the invoice is too much. I'm the credit controller. I don't know what was promised. So I'm going to go back to the salesperson to ask them to check the order. So now I can assign this dispute to somebody within the organization because I don't know what was done at the time of order. So these are now all people within my organization, or if I don't know who's done it, let's just take it to the group sales email address, or if I do know who it is, I can send it straight to them. And again, these are all templated emails, and it might not be an obvious thing to do to actually send an email to someone that's actually put in a complaint or a query or a dispute. But I can send the customer something, and also I can send something internally as well. It's nice to send something to the customer because at the end of the day, they've taken the trouble to let you know of something that isn't quite right. So because it's templated and because it's easy, it's very easy just to follow it up with an email. But also, if there are any credit controllers on the webinar today, there's one feature here that I'm sure you'll really like. And what that feature is I can actually pull through who it's been assigned to. So this is the customer's email. So it's saying, you know, we have this dispute tracking system as a commitment to our high quality customer service. And this is who that dispute has gone to. So they're not going to be chasing me. They're actually going to be chasing the person it's been assigned to. So it works really well. The letter will always give the further detail. So this is what you said, and this is the invoice I've raised that dispute against. Internally, I've actually done an email to Angela that looks after this customer, and in her letter it actually has the finer detail. So this is what the customer said, the invoice was too much, and this is what I think you should do. So once the dispute comes back to me and has been resolved and whatever has happened is the customer's happy now, then I just need to let Credit Hound know about it. Might be the case they've already sent the payment and it's been paid. If so, that's great. If not, let's go into Credit Hound and actually resolve this dispute. And that's all I need to do is resolve it, and it will take it out of dispute, but it will still keep the full audit trail there. So if I am chasing this at a further date, what I can see is that this is an invoice that has been disputed, but I know that because the full audit trail is there. And of course, now this invoice will go back into the chasing cycle because it's no longer in dispute. So that's how we can put in either manual notes about something that's a payment that's coming in, or even if we want to raise a dispute. And both of those things link up to the rules as well, which will exempt people, if you want to, from receiving emails within the chasing cycle for a certain period of time, because of course you don't want to be hassling people for payment when you already know something about it. So the other thing that we can do within Credit Hound is actually reporting as well. So there's lots of different reports that we can see here that it will give me. Probably the ones that people will like the most are probably things like, okay, we've sent all of these disputes to all these internal people, but let's produce a report, because as they start getting overdue, we can actually see here how many days overdue it is. So we can actually do a report just for a certain person or a group of people, and we can actually email this report out to them just to basically chase them. So that's how we can be up to speed with the actual disputes. It's always important to keep on top of disputes, because a dispute could signify something is amiss at your organization. So it might be faulty goods. Are we getting lots of complaints about faulty goods? If so, I'll be able to see it on these charts here. Of course, the notes I'm putting in Credit Hound, they can also be visible on the actual report as well. So I can actually see all of that information here. Promise cash. So it's even though we've got that information high level, we can actually look here at a report that actually tells me which accounts it's coming from as well. It might be that you want to see what notes people are putting in on a transaction dossier. So it might be I just want a clear overview of all the accounts, all the transactions, and any notes that go with it. And this report is something that will give me that information. Now, any one of the reports here, and there's about 20 of them in total, not only can I filter it out to give me certain information, but also what I can do is actually manipulate the report as well. So you might want to call it something different. You might want to move around the columns. You might want to change the headings and things like that. And that's easily done. You'll notice there is an edit button here, which will allow you to do that. All I'll ever say to everyone is always keep the original and do a save as when you're editing, and then create a new report before you start editing the original one just here. Okay, so there are sort of other small features as well, which depending on your organization will depend on whether it will be relevant or not, but just looking at this time, and I just want to cover off a few more things which will be relevant for everybody. And that is the different user types that you can actually have with Credit Hound. So we've just had a look at a full user license, which is for a credit controller. Now let's log in here. Oh, right, okay. Sorry, I picked the wrong icon. I was wondering why I couldn't log into it there. Okay then, so I'm just going to now log in as Richard, and Richard will probably be someone like a financial director, financial controller, head of credit control, anyone like that. And what he wants to do is to be able to come into Credit Hound in order to have a look at information, run off reports, things like that. So actually it will look exactly the same. He's got a slightly different dashboard. He wants to see different information. He can still go to the account screen and still click into a customer. But the one thing we'll notice that he can't see is that start button. So down at the bottom that we saw previously, you'll see that that's missing here. And it's because anything that we do within this screen here will actually have an effect on the chasing cycle. If they want to put notes on, that's fine. They can still add notes here. They still have the ability to do that, as you can see. So now on the audit trail, you can see the user has now changed. Now I've logged in as someone else. There is a third user type. So now I'm going to log in as Thomas, and Thomas is probably an admin user or even a salesperson. For a salesperson, it works really well. Thomas might be going out to one of his customers tomorrow, just checking the status of the accounts. There's nobody in accounts available to speak to him, so he can be self-sufficient and have a look himself. So we call this a limited user. And a limited user, when I log into that same account, you'll see why it's limited. First of all, I don't have a dashboard. I can't see reports, and I just can have a list of my accounts, which I can actually stipulate which accounts they actually sees. I can still go here, and like with the other user, they can also add notes as well. So now I've got a note, so there's Zoe, Richard, and Thomas as well. So that is what most people use for salespeople, actually, because it does work rather nicely. So I don't need to be telling or asking accounts about an account status. I can actually see it just there. So they're the three different user types: full system user for a credit controller, the BI user, which is like a manager, and a limited user, somebody like sales. So also what we have, so if you're already a user of Credit Hound or you're thinking of having the software, if you go to the Draycir website, what you'll be able to see under the support is there's actually some training videos here. If you filter on Credit Hound, there we go. So, you know, once you've had your training, which incidentally, hance are our accredited partner. They're accredited to obviously sell the software, but also to install it, configure it, and also support it. So once you've had the software installed, then, you know, you can only retain so much of the information. So if you want to go back on something just to check how to do something, you can see there's a whole host of different videos, 6 pages worth of videos on how to do things, which is really helpful and always useful to know as well. So that can be found, like I say, at the Draycir website under support, under training videos. Okay, so that's it from the demonstration today. Some of you may have some questions. So I don't know if any questions have come up throughout the demonstration. Tom, have you had any questions coming through that we can cover off?
We've had a few,
we
Zoe, but nothing that looks like we can cover off right now. So we'll come back to the attendees on that afterwards.
Perfect. Okay, no problem. So some of the questions might be sort of user specific for certain businesses and things like that. So we can cover those off on a one-to-one basis. So having a look at the time, look at that. I'm 4 minutes early. It's a rarity. I was 1 minute early the other day. So I'm doing better. I'm doing better.
You've done well, Zoe.
Fantastic. So
well, thanks for that, Zoe.
Yeah, okay. No
and that
problem.
concludes today's session. So thank you to all of our attendees for joining as well. For our attendees, please do keep a lookout in your inboxes over the next couple of days, as you should find a link to today's recording, so you can refer back to it in the future. Once the webinar has closed, a short survey will pop up, and we'll be really grateful if you could take a few moments to complete it. But otherwise, that's it for today. So thanks for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.